Hello, my dear English learners. I want you to imagine a very specific moment. You're in a conversation. Maybe it's a job interview. Maybe it's a college presentation. Maybe someone suddenly asks you a simple question in English. And for 1 second, everything feels normal. Then suddenly, your mind goes blank. The words disappear. Your heartbeat gets louder. You start searching for simple sentences you already knew yesterday. And the more you try to sound fluent, the more nervous you become. Now here's the strange part. This doesn't only happen to beginners. It happens to people who already understand English. People who watch English videos. People who know grammar rules. People who can understand movies and podcasts. And yet, the moment they try to speak naturally in real life, something breaks. For years, people believed this was just a vocabulary problem, but what looks like lack of English is often something much deeper, something psychological, something emotional. And honestly, once you understand what's really happening inside your brain during conversations, you may never look at fluency the same way again. Because this video is not only about English, it's about fear, the hidden fear behind fluency. Now think carefully about this. Why do many learners speak English better when they are alone? Alone, the sentences come naturally. You can think clearly. You can even imagine yourself sounding fluent. But the moment another person appears, your confidence changes completely. Why? Because human beings behave differently under observation. The moment we feel judged, the brain changes. And this is where the real story begins. Most learners think speaking English is only about grammar and vocabulary, but real conversations are not written exams. Real conversations happen live, fast, unpredictable, emotional. There's pressure. And under pressure, the brain starts multitasking aggressively. You try to understand the other person. Remember vocabulary. Translate your thoughts. Check pronunciation. Avoid mistakes. And sound confident. All at the same time. Now here's where it gets interesting. The human brain is terrible at performing naturally under constant self-monitoring, especially during stress. And suddenly, what should feel like communication starts feeling like survival. What if I make mistakes? What if they laugh? What if I freeze again? What if they think I'm stupid? So what looks like a language problem is often fear interrupting performance, and millions of learners don't even realize it. And here's the uncomfortable part, but important. For years, many students were taught English in a way that made mistakes feel dangerous. Wrong grammar, correction, wrong pronunciation, embarrassment, wrong answer, laughter, slow speaking, judgment. Now, obviously, teachers wanted students to improve, but something unintended happened. Many learners stopped seeing English as communication and started seeing it as performance, as a test. And tests create pressure. Now think about this carefully. How many people can solve English grammar exercises perfectly, but panic during a real phone call? How many students studied English for years, yet still avoid speaking in public? That contradiction reveals something powerful. Because knowledge alone does not create fluency. Speaking is not only intellectual, it's emotional. And emotions affect performance far more than people realize. Now, here's where things become even more interesting. The brain remembers emotional experiences strongly. One embarrassing classroom moment, one failed interview, one awkward conversation can quietly affect confidence for years. And slowly, learners develop a dangerous habit. They begin over-monitoring themselves while speaking. Every sentence becomes stressful. Every pause feels embarrassing. Every mistake feels huge. And this is where fluency starts collapsing. Not because the learner is incapable, but because the brain no longer feels safe. Now you might be wondering, if I already know English, why do I still speak slowly? The answer is surprisingly hidden, because many learners are not thinking in English. They are translating. Inside the brain, every sentence becomes a two-step process. First, the thought appears in your native language. Then the brain tries converting it into English. Now, this may not seem like a huge problem, but during real conversations, even a small delay feels massive, because conversations move quickly, and while your brain is busy translating, the other person is already waiting for your response. That pressure creates panic, and panic creates more freezing. Now here's where it gets fascinating. Fluent speakers usually don't translate sentence by sentence. The language connects directly to meaning, automatically, naturally. But many learners never fully build that direct connection. Why? Because for years they learned English academically, not emotionally. They memorized English, but they didn't live through English. That difference changes everything. Because fluency is not only about knowing words, it's about retrieval speed under pressure. And pressure becomes dangerous when overthinking enters the process. And here's the interesting part. Most learners think confident speakers were always confident. That's rarely true. In reality, many fluent speakers once felt exactly the same fear. The difference is not fearlessness. The difference is repetition. They continued speaking despite discomfort. And over time, the brain adapted. Now, this changes everything. Because confidence is not something people magically receive before speaking. Confidence is usually built after surviving many imperfect conversations. That's the secret most learners never hear. For years, people believed fluency comes first, then confidence. But often, confidence grows because people keep speaking imperfectly. Now here's the irony. Perfectionists often improve slower because they wait too long before speaking freely. They prepare endlessly, study endlessly, mentally rehearse endlessly, waiting for the perfect moment when they finally sound fluent. But language doesn't work that way. Fluency grows through messy repetition, not silent preparation. And honestly, that realization changes lives. Because suddenly learners stop asking, "How do I speak perfectly?" and start asking, "How do I become comfortable speaking imperfectly?" That question leads to real progress. Now let's talk about what actually changes fluency. And no, it's not some magical grammar trick. It's something deeper. The moment you stop treating English like danger, your brain starts relaxing. And relaxed brains communicate better. This is why some learners suddenly speak better with supportive friends, or online strangers, or while talking casually about topics they enjoy. Because emotional pressure decreases. And when fear decreases, language becomes easier to access. Now, this doesn't mean vocabulary and grammar are useless. Of course they matter. But many intermediate learners already know enough English to communicate basic ideas. Their biggest obstacle is psychological pressure during real conversations. So what helps? First, more natural exposure, not only textbooks, real voices, real conversations, movies, podcasts, interviews, daily listening. Because familiarity reduces fear. Second, stop translating every sentence mentally. This transition takes time, but the more English you hear naturally, the more your brain starts connecting English directly to meaning. Third, allow yourself to pause. This is important. Pausing does not mean failure. Even fluent speakers pause while thinking. The real problem begins when learners panic during pauses. Panic creates more freezing. Relaxation restores flow. And finally, speak before you feel fully ready. Because readiness often comes after action, not before it. So let's return to the original question. Why does your mind go blank in English? Not because you are unintelligent, not because you are incapable, and often, not because you lack English knowledge. What looks like a language problem is actually fear interrupting performance, fear of judgment, fear of embarrassment, fear of sounding slow, fear of not sounding good enough. And once fear enters the conversation, the brain freezes. But here's the beautiful part. Fear can change. The more you speak imperfectly, the more your brain relaxes, the more conversations you survive, the less dangerous English feels. And eventually, something surprising happens. You stop obsessing over every small mistake. You stop mentally translating every sentence. You stop panicking during pauses. And English slowly starts feeling natural. Not because you suddenly became perfect, but because your brain finally stopped treating English like danger. And honestly, that may be the real secret behind fluency. Fluent speakers are not fearless. They simply learned how to continue speaking despite imperfection. That's the difference. So if your mind goes blank sometimes, remember this. You are not broken. You are experiencing something millions of learners experience silently every day. And the solution is not becoming perfect overnight. The solution is slowly becoming comfortable with being imperfect. Because fluency is not about never freezing. It's about learning to keep speaking even when you do. And the moment you truly understand that, English stops feeling like a test and finally starts feeling like a language